Bringing the justice with your fists and feet. This is Sega Masters. Today, as we wrap up Sega releases from May of 1989, we shine the spotlight on Vigilante, the second arcade game from Irem to be ported to the Master System without ever appearing on the NES, the other being R-Type, which we previously covered. And it's even a side-scrolling beat-em-up, a genre that up to this point hasn't been well represented on Sega's console to say the least, since every belt-scroller we've seen thus far has been something of a disappointment. This card unfortunately won't be the one to end that trend. The backstory is typical beat-em-up fare. You're the unnamed protector of a once peaceful city that has fallen victim to a gang of troublemaking rogues, who even decided to up the ante by kidnapping your best girl Maria. Since you usually can't depend on the police to do anything about it in these types of games, you naturally decide to take matters into your own hands to rescue Maria like any good vigilante would. Which of course involves single-handedly taking the gang out one thug at a time through 5 seedy inner-city levels. Back in 1984, Irem essentially created the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre with its monster arcade hit Kung Fu Master, which pretty much established the blueprint that was followed by countless belt-scrollers to come. Indeed, plenty of other arcade publishers looked to build upon the foundation that Kung Fu Master set, while adding their own touches to evolve the genre further, most notably Double Dragon and its 2-player simultaneous action. Meanwhile, Irem finally unveiled their own follow-up to Kung Fu Master in 1988, Vigilante, which was a very similar title to its predecessor gameplay-wise, the only change being its more Americanized setting. While it's a perfectly serviceable brawler for what it was, with solid crisp gameplay and decent visuals, it didn't exactly set the world on fire, mainly because it felt a little too much like the old lone hero style of brawlers which were all but passé by the latter half of the 1980s. Even though Vigilante wasn't exactly burning up the sales charts, Sega still figured it was good enough to port to the Master System since no one else seemed interested enough to bring it to Nintendo's console, though there just may be a reason for that. Apparently, the programmers felt content to simply do a straight-up conversion of the arcade game, which means the action is as straightforward as can be, right down to everything taking place on a single 2D plane. As our hero tries to make his way to the end of the level within the given time limit, he is ambushed from both sides by endlessly respawning waves of hooligans that need to be taken out with his fists or feet, or a handy pair of nunchucks someone thoughtfully left behind for you to pick up and use. You're pitted against a small selection of enemy types, the most common being these thugs in the green pants who constantly walk right up to you and grab you in a chokehold, sapping your health and leaving you vulnerable to further attack from his cohorts until you shake them loose. Other toughs come armed with their own weapons like knives, pipes, and even guns in some cases, while the nunchucks you find are the only weapons you can use yourself. Just like its arcade parent, the home version of Vigilante only offers a bare-bones street fighting experience compared to its contemporaries at the time. The fact is, by the late 1980s, most console beat-em-ups were featuring more depth and replayability than the simple arcade-style punch-and-kick fest of the past. Whether it's offering 2-player simultaneous action, or giving your main character a wide array of special moves, or even sporting some unique features such as light RPG elements in a few cases. You'll find no such unique features in Vigilante to put more meat on the bone, so to speak. You just beat up the same group of baddies with a few basic punches and kicks at your disposal, with no special moves or combos available to add some variety to your offense. The level even concludes with a required battle against the big bruiser waiting to take his shots at you. And if you've seen a boss fight at any beat-em-up, you know how these confrontations usually work. You can actually make quick work of this first boss if you know how. Once you finally deplete your foe's health bar, the Vigilante can triumphantly march off to the next locale to continue his rescue mission and get rewarded as bonus points in the process, with a brief cutscene setting up the following level. Then it's another round of punching and kicking everyone out of your way, and the first stage shows all you have to really look forward to for 5 rather short levels total. While the gameplay may be pretty vanilla, at least it takes place in a vibrantly colored game world, you're treated to a varied selection of scenic backgrounds that all feature a few nice touches, such as the sunset sky in this junkyard stage. The detailed sprites also sport some solid animation, including the thugs' reactions when you connect with a shot on them, with some breakup that's barely noticeable. As is usually the case with 1989 Master System releases, everything is backed up by a forgettable soundtrack of bland background toots and tinny sound effects. However, coming off as something of a throwback turns out to be the least of this cart's issues. Instead of merely being dull and repetitive, Vigilante comes off as broken, due to issues that render this card almost unplayable. For starters, the controls are noticeably slow to respond to your inputs, and that lag constantly leaves you open for attacks even when you try to defend yourself. And good luck trying to pull off a jumping attack. Whatever reason, it requires a convoluted combination of buttons that doesn't always work when you need it to. Not only that, the attack range of your fists and feet are both pretty short, and it doesn't help that you also have to worry about some rather iffy collision detection. Often when you think you've made contact, your foes don't even flinch as they rush up and grab you, constantly draining your health in the process. Obtaining and holding onto the nunchucks are your only real hope to survive, since their extended reach allows you to dispose of baddies much easier than doing it barehanded. Should you lose the chucks from taking too many hits, you're as good as dead meat, and will most likely be breaking your control in frustration as you helplessly watch your character perish. While you can take the first boss out with ease, the other end-of-level guardians are frustrating to fight. They're constantly backing away from you, looking to bait you into getting close enough to pound on you, and their reach with their fists and feet far trumps yours. You'll constantly be struggling to get in your blows unless you have the nunchucks, which again makes these fights far more tolerable. If you should fall during this confrontation, a generous checkpoint lets you restart near the boss, though you may not be able to reclaim your weapon in time for your rematch. You're also granted unlimited continues once you lose all your lives, though you're booted back to the beginning of each stage, which can seem to drag on forever due to the aforementioned issues in spite of their brevity. In conclusion, Sega's Vigilante ranks as yet another Master System disappointment. Even though it can be beaten in about 20 minutes, it still had the chance to be at least a decent time waster. Instead, the flaws overwhelm what little enjoyment could have been found here, and gives you no reason to play it over the other console beat-em-ups offering far more bang for your buck. Even those just wanting to relive the arcade game have a much better home option to choose from. Just like we saw with R-Type, Vigilante was ported to NEC's TurboGrafx-16 console and released in the fall of 1989. Granted, it too was a straightforward port that didn't offer any more features than Sega's conversion, but actually sported tight, crisp gameplay which made it a much more pleasant experience and thus rendered Sega's port obsolete less than a year after its release. Any way you slice it, the Master System Vigilante can easily be skipped since there are better ways to fulfill your appetite for mayhem.